C-11 allows Trudeau to adjust the algorithm in private companies like Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, to force them to boost news sources that he likes and to deboost those that he doesn't. He calls it discoverability. That is, he will determine what shows up when you type in news story or Justin Trudeau. Type that into the internet right now, and you're subject to Google's algorithm. And they might have some political views themselves. They'll boost this or that, but under C-11, they will be able to dictate what political stripe those companies show. Well, that's C-11. C-18 has some unintended consequences, or maybe they're intended consequences as well. The idea there is to take money from these tech giants and spread it around Justin Trudeau's friends in the media. Joining us more now to talk more about it is our friend Spencer Fernando from SpencerFernando.com. Spencer, great to see you again. It's hard to keep track of all these bills, C-11, C-18, but what you're focused on in your story today, and we'll put it on our screen here, is some Canadians already facing restricted access to online news due to Liberal Bill C-18. The Liberal government was warned this could happen. They ignored the warnings and pushed ahead with an ideological centralizing agenda. Why don't you tell our viewers what's happening?
Yeah, well, so basically C-18 will make companies like Google, possibly Twitter, Facebook, pay for links. And, as you think about that, you're thinking, well, that kind of sounds like a stupid idea, because if I post something on Twitter or it gets, spread on Google, I'm benefiting. It's my content and people are seeing it. I don't control Google. I don't control Twitter. And that's a platform I wouldn't have access to unless they provided it, right? So the idea that they should be paying people to be able to post their links on there obviously makes no sense. And so, it's interesting. It's something you see a lot from governments, especially centralizing governments, where they could never create a business. They could never be innovative enough to, create a Google or Twitter or anything like that. But they somehow still feel entitled to control it and to decide, where, what the company should do, what it's allowed to, how it's allowed to function, how it has to be run. Mm-hmm. And so what Google's kind of saying is, look, you're saying that we either have to pay for links or, we're not allowed to provide our service. So we're not going to provide our service. You can't make us provide a service to people in Canada. It's an independent company. They can choose to do that or not. So they're testing out, I think it's about 4% of the population is having restricted access to Canadian news on Google. I've seen some journalists saying that they went onto Google, they searched up certain news stories and just nothing came up. And so they had to go search elsewhere. And that's because Google's testing out what they will probably roll out at a much bigger scale if the Liberals go ahead with C-18, as there's every indication they're going to.
Yeah, I'm sure you're in the same position that we are. We live on the internet. We don't have any other way of expression. The internet is everything these days. But how do you get people to look at your stuff? Well, you hope to catch a wave. You hope to go viral. Mm-hmm. You hope that some big page links to your stuff on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. And it's a happy day when that happens because mm-hmm. people follow the link to your website and they maybe click on an ad or maybe buy something or at least get to know you, maybe subscribe. It is a happy day for a publisher when someone links to you. In fact, publishers typically pay for that in an ad. The idea that Google or other big companies would pay Rebel News, would pay SpencerFernando.com, would pay the CBC for the privilege of sending traffic to them is so opposite of the strategic concept of the internet. The concept of the internet is that you can link to anyone, you can follow the links, you never know where you're going to wind up, and you don't have to pay to click on a link. This is Trudeau trying to charge Google for a link. Let me quote from your story. You have a really good point here. You quote Professor Michael Geist, who is a liberal, by the way. He's not a right winger. But here's what he says about what's so crazy about charging Google to have a link to your site. Let me just read this. You were quoting Michael Geist. This is the problem with C-18 in a nutshell. Pablo Rodriguez, spokesman, says they want compensation for use. But that's not what the bill says. It mandates payments for facilitating access to news, including just links. That's not compensable use. And I understand what that means. If someone were to take a Rebel News video and play it for their people and not give us any money. I'd say, hey, we did all the work. You're stealing our work and giving it away for free. I would want some compensation. But if all Google did was say, give a link that people can come to my site, that's not something that they have to pay me for. It's something I have to pay them for. I just think that this is a really weird law. And although I hate Google for a number of reasons, I'm on their side here.
Yeah, and it's not just this, it's the trend of what the Liberals are doing, upping CBC's budget, the $650 million media bailout, just all their legislation, C-11, obviously. It's that they don't like the fact that they're losing control over the narrative on many different issues. And they don't like the fact that they're not able to get it back easily, right? Because, look, if you're the Liberals and you feel that the establishment media, traditional outlets are turning against you, there's a lot of things you can do. There's government regulations you can apply to them. There's money, as the Liberals have already done, that you can give to them to make them more dependent. It's far tougher to control every individual Canadian who can share their viewpoint on the internet, right? So what do you do about that if you're a government that is upset that you're losing centralized control over certain issues? And one of the ways you do that, of course, is to, either push services to, compensate people, which what it really means is they want to direct even more money to established media outlets. That's the whole idea. And then if, the Liberals, I don't think they'll be too upset if Google actually, stops showing as much Canadian news online, because that'll mean that they can just direct more people to try to follow established media outlets. They'd be glad to see a constrained number of places where Canadians can freely get news. And so it's just the trend with them, right? And so, I think you see some Liberal MPs who on certain other issues have been, concerned about unintended, supposedly consequences of what Trudeau is doing. And we'll see if people speak out about this one, because it's just a drip, 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 right? You never just wake up.
That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. We rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.